Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the best running back in every single round of your fantasy drafts in 2024 fantasy football. We're going to be going through rounds 1 all the way up until round number 11, and we'll be discussing my favorite running back to draft in every single one of those rounds. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into the best running back in every round of your fantasy draft in 2024 fantasy football. We begin in round number 1 with Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Current aggregate ADP from ESPN, Sleeper, MFL, Fantrax, and NFFC have him at pick number 7. Underdog Fantasy ADP running back 2 at pick 6.8. Now, Christian McCaffrey is technically the best running back selection in round number 1, but unless you are the number 1 overall pick in a majority of leagues, you won't even have the opportunity to draft Christian McCaffrey. And I think that Bijan Robinson this season could easily jump past, leapfrog Christian McCaffrey as the running back 1 and end up as pick number 1 in a lot of 2025 fantasy football drafts. Raheem Morris being the new head coach here is music to my ears because Bijan Robinson has been talked up heavily by Raheem Morris, and Bijan Robinson himself has mentioned that he believes he'll be used in a Christian McCaffrey-esque role this season, meaning he is going to get a lot of opportunities to touch the ball. He's going to be getting a bunch of rushing opportunities as well as a bunch of pass catching opportunities. And something that was missing last year for Bijan Robinson, and one of the biggest reasons as to why he ended up being a bust in his rookie year, was because Arthur Smith did not use Bijan Robinson correctly, despite the fact that they drafted Bijan Robinson with such a high NFL draft pick in the 2023 NFL draft. They did not use him correctly, and they also were an offense that was pretty inept. The fact that Desmond Ridder was the starting quarterback and Desmond Ridder is an absolute fucking garbage can. The addition of Kirk Cousins to this offense and the change at head coach, I believe, are going to be a recipe of sugar, spice, and everything nice like the Powerpuff Girls for Bijan Robinson to be successful this season. Last year, he only averaged 12.6 carries per game, which in my opinion is shockingly low, considering, again, they rolled out the red carpet to draft Bijan Robinson, and I, along with many other people, thought that he was a shoo-in to be a top 10 back last season. He ranked 19th in carries and 15th in rushing yards, 3rd in targets, 6th in receptions, 4th in receiving yards, and 20th in total touchdowns with just 8. 9th in yards per touch, though, in terms of efficiency, and 5th in yards created. As long as Raheem Mostert uses Bijan Robinson correctly, which I believe he will, and as long as Kirk Cousins is just halfway competent, this is an offense set up for success. For Bijan Robinson, they are going to be a team that isn't trailing by a gazillion points late in games, so they're going to be able to run the rock through the 4th quarter, and Bijan Robinson is a fantastic pass catcher. So as long as Kirk Cousins is dumping it off to Bijan Robinson, and as long as he sees an increase in carries, which again, I believe both of these things are going to be true, then Bijan Robinson's upside, his ceiling, is the running back 1. We saw all of the skill on display last season. It was just Arthur Smith's dumbass basically holding Bijan back. He essentially put Bijan Robinson in a straitjacket and dumped him in some fucking water. And now with head coach Raheem Morris, I believe that he's not going to get Houdini'd. I believe that Bijan Robinson is going to be put in the driver's seat to succeed, and I think that he could easily finish as the running back 1. So outside of Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson is the best running back pick in round number 1. In round number 2, we got Jonathan Taylor, and Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, in my opinion, were going head-to-head, mano-a-mano for this pick. And since we've given the Gawk 9000 special, the Hawk Tua, to Saquon Barkley a bunch recently, I figured let's talk about Jonathan Taylor. They're both very close in my opinion. Aggregate ADP for JT, pick number 13, Underdog Fantasy, running back 5 at pick 16. Now, Jonathan Taylor is a guy that a couple of years ago, we were all talking about how this guy is one of the best running backs in the NFL, and this guy is going to be a perennial top 5 running back every single year in fantasy football. Last year, going into the season, there is a whole contract dispute with Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor. There's talks about how Jim Irsay wants to save some fucking whale, bring in a helicopter to save this whale, but he wasn't ready to whip out that huge check that you get for winning the lottery to pay Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor misses some time, and then eventually Jonathan Taylor is back. He's been paid, and by then, Jonathan Taylor kind of needed to get into the swing of things. He had some huge games, but overall, Jonathan Taylor was a disappointment if you drafted him before all of that news about the contract stuff, because you would have drafted him highly, and he was the running back 33, though he was the running back 12 in points per game. He missed the first 4 games with an ankle injury that was also a part of that whole contract dispute, and then he missed some time in the middle of the season with a torn thumb ligament. The only reason why people are nervous about Jonathan Taylor is because of Anthony Richardson. But if we remember back to last season, we saw that Zack was putting defenses in a fucking blender with Anthony Richardson under center. I get there's going to be times where Anthony Richardson vultures Jonathan Taylor, and people are going to get a little bit frustrated and get their panties all in a bunch. But at the end of the day, Jonathan Taylor is still one of the best running backs in the NFL. Is Anthony Richardson going to dump him off the ball 80 plus times this season? Probably not, right? I think Bijan Robinson could get 85 targets. I don't think Jonathan Taylor is going to get that. But at the end of the day, he is going to make up for it with his rushing efficiency and with the rushing touchdown upside. We know Shane Steichen, head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, has been very successful at having solid running backs in fantasy football with quarterbacks that can run the ball. You remember Miles Sanders a couple of years ago, and Miles Sanders can't even hold the jockstrap of Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is levels above in terms of skill set. I think people are wrongfully scared of Jonathan Taylor, and I think Jonathan Taylor is going to return back to the throne as one of the best running backs in the NFL. We've seen him do it before. Last year, he ranked 6th in Dominator rating, and I think Jonathan Taylor is a shoo-in to be one of the top-end running backs in fantasy football, and I really do believe, while I don't have him ranked as the running back number 1, he does have the upside to finish this year as the running back 1. At number 3, in round 3, we got Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. Aggregate ADP pick 27, Underdog Fantasy ADP running back 9 at pick 30.8. Now, the fact that you can get Derrick Henry in the 3rd round to me is absolutely laughable, because I think Derrick Henry should go as high as a 2nd round pick. Derrick Henry is in one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL and has been put into a position where he could score, in my opinion, 20 touchdowns this season. We saw Gus Edwards, who is nowhere near as good as Derrick Henry, dominate for fantasy football in this offense because of the touchdowns. Derrick Henry is levels above Gus Edwards, and Derrick Henry is going to rush 1,000,000 times a game. He led the league last season in carries. He was 2nd in rushing yards. I understand that Derrick Henry isn't Christian McCaffrey out there or Austin Eckler, and he's not going to catch 1,000,000 passes game in and game out, but Derrick Henry also has gotten better at catching passes. Now, I understand that Lamar isn't a check down Charlie like Derek Carr, dumping the ball off 10 to 12 times in some games to Alvin Kamara, but if Derrick Henry is able to get 2 targets a game, that is just the cherry and whipped cream on top of a nice Sunday for Derrick Henry. Literally a nice Sunday, because Derrick Henry's going to be playing a lot of football on Sunday, and he is going to be putting your fantasy football team on is back. If you go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds and you can get Derrick Henry as your running back 1 in the 3rd round, you should be laughing directly to the bank. I get that Derrick Henry is 1 year older and all of these people like to panic and shit down their pant leg thinking about the fact that he's getting a little bit older. That means he's guaranteed to bust. At the end of the day, he ranked 10th in yards created last year, 9th in evaded tackles, 8th in breakaway run rate, 5th in dominator rating. Derrick Henry still has it. And now Derrick Henry is in a situation, unlike last year in Tennessee, where the offense is going to be up in games and they are going to be able to use Derrick Henry late. Derrick Henry got bent over a table last year by the fact that the Tennessee Titans were getting spit roasted late in games and they'd have to bring in Tajay Spears. So Derrick Henry was not as consistent as we are used to. But now in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson on a team that is going to be laying the smackdown brother like their name was Hulk Hogan on defenses, Derrick Henry is going to be able to be in late in games, adding even further bonus points towards Derrick Henry. I think he is a no-brainer in the 3rd round. The touchdown upside is insane. Again, the only argument I'm seeing people say against him is that, oh, he's getting a little bit old. I don't buy into that at all. I think Derrick Henry is going to make a lot of people look foolish in 2024, and he's going to make people like me who believe in Derrick Henry a lot of money. At number 4, we got Joe Mixon in round number 4 of the Houston Texans. Aggregate ADP tied for pick number 47. Underdog fantasy ADP running back 14 at pick number 62. Now, Joe Mixon is a guy that I will acknowledge definitely doesn't look like his old self. Joe Mixon has definitely lost a little bit of his luster compared to his yesteryears. But at the end of the day, just because Joe Mixon looks a little bit worse than he did a couple of years ago, he has been jolted into one of the best situations to succeed at the running back position. I was a huge Dameon Pierce guy last season, and Dameon Pierce ultimately stabbed me on the back, and it was bad, right? Dameon Pierce was absolutely terrible. But you want to know who wasn't terrible in the Houston Texans offense? For one, it would be that guy CJ Stroud. I think you've heard of him. And for two, it was this guy named Devin Singletary who became the lead back on the Houston Texans. Now, prior to last season, you would talk about Devin Singletary as a okay backup, not a guy that you're getting all that excited about. If the running back one was to go down, it's like, I could play Devin Singletary, I guess, right? That's what you would have thought. But last season, Devin Singletary turned the page greatly on his career. He looked amazing, and that was on a Houston Texans offensive line that wasn't as great as I think they could end up being this year. And that was also on an offense that didn't have Stephon Diggs. So now they have Tank Dell, Nico Collins, as well as Stephon Diggs, the best trio, the best threesome you've seen since Angela White, Mia Malkova, and Riley Reid linked up on the hub, right? Joe Mixon is in the perfect, or one of the most perfect situations. Indeed, Joe Mixon was successful last year in Cincinnati, despite the fact that the team was up and down all year long. They start off the season, and guess what? Joe Burrow is banged up. Things don't look great. And then Joe Burrow starts to get healthy, and the Bengals start rising up the rankings. It's like, okay, maybe the Bengals could make it to the AFC Championship game. Maybe the Bengals are going to go back to the Super Bowl like they did a couple of years ago up against the Rams. And then Burrow gets hurt again, and then the Cincinnati Bengals are dead in the water. Leonardo DiCaprio style in the Titanic, right? But despite all of the ups and downs of the season, Mixon was still the running back 6 in PPR and the running back 11 in PPR points per game. He played in all 17 games, ranking 5th in carries, 8th in rushing yards, 13th in targets, 9th in receptions, 12th in receiving yards, and 6th in total touchdowns, ranking 10th in dominator rating, 6th in yards created, and 14th in evaded tackles. So I understand that Joe Mixon isn't as good as he used to be. But in this Houston Texans offense, in an offense that is going to be just beating down on defenses, haymakers left and right, the Alex Puton Perea left hand, Poetan, right? They're gonna be knocking motherfuckers out game in and game out, and Joe Mixon is going to benefit heavily from that. I think he could easily repeat scoring 10 plus touchdowns in 2024, and I think as the running back 14 off the board, there is a great argument to be made that Joe Mixon could finish as a top 12 back. At number 5 in the 5th round, we got Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara seems to be an incredibly polarizing player for fantasy football this season. I have seen so many people that say that they don't believe in Alvin Kamara and that they think that Kendre Miller could take over, or that they just think Alvin Kamara has gotten a little bit too old. Now, my counter to Kendre Miller taking over from Alvin Kamara is, do I think that it is 100%, like Alvin Kamara is 100% safe from Kendre Miller, potentially getting behind him, hitting him with the RKO and stealing his job? I think there is a percent chance that Kendre Miller could do that. But based upon what I saw last season, even if Kendre Miller is working in a little bit more, Alvin Kamara is going to see so many targets game in and game out. He ranked 2nd in target share at running back and 4th in yards per route run. Alvin Kamara played in 13 games last year because he was suspended for the start of the season, and still finished as a top 12 running back in PPR, running back number 11, and was the running back 3 in PPR points per game. That is because of the targets. 13.8 carries per game, 53.4 rushing yards per game, 6.7 targets per game. 2nd at running back, ranked 2nd in targets with 13 games played. 2nd in receptions, 5.8 per game. 6th in receiving yards, 35.8 per game, and 6 total touchdowns, 24th. So if he's able to score a little bit more, and he is going to be seeing as many targets as he saw last season, why would you be scared of Alvin Kamara? I understand Saints offense on paper with Derek Carr isn't the best. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys and tell you that I think that Derek Carr is going to be a lot better this season, and that I think the Saints are going to do a complete 180 and be one of the best teams in the NFC, because that would be a lie. I do not believe that. But what I do believe is that Derek Carr is a check down Charlie, that Derek Carr feels pressure, he dumps the ball off, and if he is going to dump the ball off 6.7 times per game, 6.7 targets for Alvin Kamara last season, if he's able to repeat 5, 6 targets per game, it's not going to matter if Kendre Miller siphons a little bit of the carries away from him. Alvin Kamara upside is top 3 running back. We saw it last season. Again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Alvin Kamara is the same guy as he used to be, right? We've seen a bit of a pattern here, right? Derrick Henry getting a little bit older, not as much the same guys he used to be, but it doesn't fucking matter because he's on the Ravens. Joe Mixon getting a little bit older, but I'm not worried because he's on the Texans. Alvin Kamara, sure, he's on a significantly worse team on the Saints, but Derek Carr is there who wants to check the ball down. The proof is in the pudding. We already saw it last season. I was out on Alvin Kamara. I didn't want anything to do with Alvin Kamara, and Alvin Kamara ended up being the savior of many fantasy football teams. And I think that right now in the 5th round, with him potentially finishing inside the top 12, wouldn't be shocking at all. He was a top 12 running back last year, only playing in 13 games. I think people are greatly overthinking Alvin Kamara this season. In the 6th round, we got David Montgomery. Now, David Montgomery isn't necessarily the highest upside pick on this list, right? David Montgomery's good outcome is probably running back 12 to 14. But where you're getting him is the running back 17, pick 75.3 on underdog, pick 66 in aggregate ADP. I think you are getting a player that is better than his ADP, that is going to be very consistent every single week, and that does have big upside if there was an injury to Zamir Gibbs in front of him. Now, we'll knock on wood because we don't root for injuries, and I'm a huge Zamir Gibbs fan, But I know damn well that while I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get more of the cut of the pie this season, while I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to see a higher workload this season, David Montgomery is not going to do the John Cena and you won't be able to see him, right? He's not going to do the Harry Potter invisibility cloak and you can't see him, right? He is still going to be there. On the goal line, while I wish they'd give it to Jahmyr Gibbs, we know they're going to use David Montgomery, the fucking wrecking ball, to get on into the end zone. He was running back 17 in PPR last year and 15 PPR points per game, 14 games played with 14 starts. He ranked 15th in carries, 9th in rushing yards. Sure, all the targets go to Jahmyr Gibbs. He only had 24 targets, 16 receptions, all outside the top 45, 117 receiving yards, 57th. But he scored 13 total touchdowns, 4th. Doing so with the 6th most defenders in the box, and he ranked 17th in true yards per carry. Again, do I think that David Montgomery is one of the best running backs in the NFL? Fuck no, baby. He's not even the best running back on his team. But in the 6th round, David Montgomery is a very reliable running back to week in and week out, with the upside of scoring multiple touchdowns in any given game and being an even further help to your team. And again, if something was to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, God forbid, I don't want anything to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, but if something was to happen, then we'd be talking about David Montgomery as a top 5 running back week in and week out. So David Montgomery has that upside. Sure, it would take an injury. These other guys, they just have the big upside without any injuries occurring. But he is also an incredibly safe player game in and game out, like wrapping that condom around your fantasy football squad. And I think David Montgomery could end up being a guy that is on a lot of championship rosters in 2024. In round number 7, we got Zamir White of the Las Vegas Raiders. Aggregate ADP pick 83, underdog fantasy ADP running back 23, pick 87.6. Now, we have talked about Zamir White a ton recently. A recent picture came out of Zamir White, and Zamir White looks like he could play fucking offensive line, right? The dude is absolutely jacked, and we have fallen for the guy. Pause, right? We've metaphorically fallen for the guy. Years past, comes out looking like a fucking tank. The guy that comes out built like a brick shit house, Mike Davis. A.J. Dillon. Laundry list of dudes that are huge, and you draft them because of that. I like Zamir White before I saw that picture. Now I'm starting to like him more. Now, in years past, when we have a hype train for a guy, and we've talked about this a bunch, right? Where they have 4 or 5 good games at the end of the season, they get drafted round. They might even get drafted in first round. We've seen it with Kenyon Drake. We've seen it with Kerryon Johnson. We've seen it with a bunch of other names. But the difference between Zamir White and those guys is you can get Zamir White now 7th round, right? You don't have to pay this insane price. And I think Zamir White is worth this middle round upside shot. Now, Zamir White was second fiddle to Josh Jacobs for entirely a majority of last season. Weeks 1 through 14, Jacobs is the guy, but then Jacobs gets hurt. And once White got the opportunity to touch the field a lot more, he was very successful. In 4 out of 5 starts, he had over 100 all-purpose yards, seeing on average 3.2 targets per game. Now, if you watch Zamir White play football, he is not the most exciting running back, right? You don't watch back his tape and you feel a little chub pop up downstairs, right? You don't watch his tape. Holy shit. This guy is the next Bo Jackson. This is the next LaDainian Tomlinson. The next whichever premier running back you want to talk about, right? When you watch his tape, I don't get that feel, right? But what I got the feeling of is that the Raiders want to run the ball. When Pierce became head coach of the Raiders, once they got rid of that dumbass McDaniels, they started to really establish the run. It didn't matter that the quarterback situation was completely up in the air. All that mattered was that they wanted to run the ball. And Zamir White was a huge benefitter of that. Now, behind Zamir White, Alexander Madison. He tried to draft Alexander Madison last year. Didn't work. Zamir White might be the next Alexander Madison. Highly possible. But again, the ADP here in the 7th round, just too juicy for me to avoid. And we've already heard head coach Pierce talk about how they want to see him get potentially 200, 300 carries. This is a team that wants to continue to establish the run even when they're losing games. And despite the fact that I don't think Zamir White's the best running back on earth, in this situation, I think Zamir White will be very successful and could have a couple of top 12 games. In the 8th round, we move to Zack Moss of the Cincinnati Bengals. Aggregate ADP pick 95, underdog fantasy ADP running back 27 at pick 92.9. We talked about underdog fantasy a bunch in today's video. If you guys are new to underdog fantasy and use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, you can claim your special pick plus up to $250 if you are a first-time depositor using promo code Notorious. We're going to be doing a bunch of drafts on Underdog Fantasy as the summer goes along. We did a live draft yesterday. You can check that out as a video on my channel. You just go to the live stream tab and you can watch it back. And we are going to do more of those as the summer goes along. So make sure you sign up before I even do a stream so that you already have your money in there. You're already ready to go. They have a lot of drafts of a variety of different buy-ins, buy-in for tournaments as low as $3 that they're going to be releasing all summer long. The big tournament, Best Ball Mania, $25 to enter, $1.5 million to first place. Make sure you guys check out Underdog Fantasy. It's a great way prepare for your fantasy football drafts. Claim your special pick plus up to $250 if you're a first-time depositor using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the description. If you have a gambling problem, make sure you call 1-800-GAMBLER. So Zack Moss is a guy that I have started to get higher and higher on. I understand that they have Chase Brown, and I understand that if you look at the tape, you can see some of that juice from Chase Brown, right? You can see some of the high upside opportunities for him. And in best ball leagues like on Underdog Fantasy, that makes him a guy that you might want to target more than in your typical redraft league where you have to actually set your lineup. I believe that while Chase Brown has that juice, I think the team is ultimately going to lean Zack Moss as the lead back on the Bengals. Now, Zack Moss was the guy that was filling in for Jonathan Taylor last season, and in 6 games in which Moss played above 50% of the snaps, he averaged 20.2 carries per game, 87 rushing yards, 4.3 yards per carry, 0.5 touchdowns. In 4 of 6 of those games, he received 3 or more targets and had multiple top 12 performances in that stretch, and he averaged 16.4 PPR points per game, which would have ranked 7th amongst running backs on the season. Now, I fully understand in Cincinnati compared to in Indianapolis, it is very unlikely that Zack Moss is seeing 20.2 carries per game, right? Last season, Joe Mixon, who we talked about previously, now in the Texans, formerly of the Bengals, on the Bengals last year, he was getting 15.1 carries per game. So it's very likely that that 20.2 carries number is going to get thrown down the drain to go hang out with the Ninja Turtles and Mr. Splinter. But at the end of the day, even if the carries are reduced, we saw that this is a guy that can get 3-4 targets every single game. And this is a guy that can be utilized on the goal line. The Bengals are going to be a team that, if Joe Burrow is able to stay healthy, is going to be at the tippy top of the mountain in the AFC and are going to be one of the best teams, thus being able to run the rock late. Again, I get that this isn't going to be Zack Moss being a full-on workhorse running back like Christian McCaffrey, where they barely even use the backup running back in Elijah Mitchell, right? We are going to see Chase Brown touch the field. Chase Brown may steal some receiving upside from Zack Moss. But we're not talking about Zack Moss as an early round pick. We're talking about him as an 8th round pick with a lot of upside based upon the tape that I saw last season and based upon the fantasy production that Zack Moss had last year in Indianapolis. I think he is worthy of an 8th round pick. Again, I get the carries won't be as voluptuous like last season with 20.2 per game, but if he's getting 15 carries a game and maybe he's able to get 75-ish rushing yards a game, and he's getting the targets, and he's able to find the end zone, you are going to be very happy with selecting Zach Moss as the running back 27. And if maybe Chase Brown is kind of just in the same role as last year where you're not even seeing him that often, Zach Moss might be able to be an even better pick than I previously believed. In the 9th round, we move to Jaylen Warren. Now, I will be 100% honest with you guys. I am not the biggest Jaylen Warren truther, but what I will tell you is the choice in the 9th round based upon aggregate ADP. There was only 2 backs going in this range. As we get deeper, there are less choices. So it was Jaylen Warren versus Trey Benson. While I like the skill set of Trey Benson and think he might be the most talented running back in the 2024 rookie class, being with James Conner, while I think he could take over from James Conner, I can't guarantee that. And there's also a chance that James Conner is just the workhorse running back for the millionth year in a row, even though we kind of always try to write him off Geno Smith style. There's a better chance, in my opinion, that Jaylen Warren steals Najee Harris's job compared to Trey Benson Conner's job. So I'll lean with Jaylen Warren. Again, not going to really give the gawk 9,000 special here to Jaylen Warren because I'm not the biggest fan, but he is technically the best running back pick in range. Pick 99 off the board, Underdog Fantasy running back 24, pick 89.4. Now, do I think that Jaylen Warren is better than Najee Harris? Yes. But do I trust that dumbass Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin, who I think is pretty smart, to figure that out? Probably not, right? They couldn't figure that out last season. And there's also been a lot of reports that Najee Harris looking a lot better. There has been reports about how Najee Harris is a lot better shape. And while a lot of the time those reports about, oh, he's in the best shape of his life are hocus pocus fucking fairy dust, they don't end up mattering, it does, at least in a situation where I don't really think Jaylen Warren will ever be able to fully take over, it does kind of sway me to be a little bit more nervous about him. Now, Najee Harris is going in most drafts as the running back 23, and actually, no, I lied. Jaylen Warren is typically coming off the board as running back 24. Najee is the running back 25. In a vacuum, I think I'd rather just have Najee. But again, Jaylen Warren has a lot of skill. 3rd in yards created per touch, 6th in true yards per carry, 7th in yards per touch, ranked 5th in juke rate, 3rd in breakaway run rate. He is way better than Najee Harris. But the reason why I can't give him my full backing, the reason why I can't truly bang the drum for him, because I know when push comes to shove, this dumbass team is just going to roll out Najee Harris ahead of him. So, again, while I think if something was to happen to Najee Harris, you might have a league winner on your hands in Jaylen Warren. I just can't give him my full vote of confidence because, again, I just feel like they're going to fuck him by using Najee Harris more. At number 10, we got a guy that I do really like, though. And, again, I do like Jaylen Warren's skill. It's just, again, even though he was 5th in targets, 5th in receptions, it's like, something just tells me they're going to use Najee Harris more than him again, and you're just going to be very frustrated all season long. At number 10, we got the Gus Bus Edwards of the LA Chargers. We just got confirmation recently. A beat reporter for the Chargers wrote that they believe Gus Edwards will be the clear lead back on the team. No shit, I've been saying that for months, but a lot of you guys probably needed that confirmation because there's a big J.K. Dobbins hive or Kamani Vidal, the Ruski running back that have been talking up these guys and fading Gus Edwards. Now, I talked about Derrick Henry, and I said how Gus Edwards is not on his level, and I fully agree with that. But what I do know about Gus Edwards is that Greg Roman, former Ravens offensive coordinator and assistant head coach, loves Gus Edwards, and Greg Roman, cousin Roman, now the Chargers offensive coordinator. So again, while I understand that Gus Edwards isn't all that amazing, he scored 13 total touchdowns last year. He was going up against the 2nd most defenders in the box, 2nd biggest stack front carry percentage, and his competition is a guy who always gets hurt in J.K. Dobbins, I don't root for injuries, Isaiah Spiller, who fucking sucks donkey cock, and Kamani Vidal rookie. Gus Edwards is on a team that is very run heavy. We know the Harbaugh way, the Michigan man way. Earn the rock. Run the ball. Even though you have Justin Herbert, instead of drafting this high-flying wide receiver in the first round, draft an offensive lineman, right? Things are pointing towards them. Obviously, we know Harbaugh wants to run the ball. They're going to run the ball a lot. Gus Edwards is a wrecking ball like the Miley Cyrus song in the red zone. Fought in Baltimore last year. Not going to sit here again and wax poetically and tell you that Gus Edwards is this elite running back. As the running back 36 off the board on a team that wants to run the ball, why is he not ranked significantly higher? Get this guy as a running back 4-ish, like the running back 4 range, low-end running back 3 in a lot of drafts. This is a guy that could be your running back 2 in matchups. This is a guy that could be your flex in spots. 10th round on a run-heavy team, on a team that's going to be able to get to the goal line with Justin Herbert, the pervert, and with his competition being as weak as it is, and with the team instilling the confidence in him already, the 10th round, great pick. And to close out today's video, the 11th round. Now, we only did 11 rounds because once you get to the 12th, the 13th, in this type of range, running backs become lessened, and the ADP also starts to matter less, right? Jerome Ford is an 11th round ADP guy, pick 126. If you took him in the 10th round, I wouldn't judge you, right? He could also go in the 12th to 13th round of some drafts. Those guys that are going like the 13th to 12th round, they might be 11th round picks in your draft. The ADP matters a lot less as you get deeper into the drafts because people are just going to take the guys that they want, and there's also less choices. So I figured 11 rounds is enough. There's also going to probably be a running back sleep. There definitely will be one. Continue on our trek to August. So Jerome Ford, F-150 of the Browns, aggregate ADP pick 126, underdog fantasy ADP running back 39 at pick 125.9. Now currently Nick Chubb is like Drake in Degrassi because bro is in a fucking wheelchair. He's not actually in a wheelchair, but metaphorically he is, right? Nick Chubb, the most recent report is he's progressing from season-ending knee injury where he had 2 separate surgeries. First in September to repair the damage to the medial capsule, meniscus, and medial collateral ligament. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins or Manuel Ferreira, so I don't really know what all that mumbo-jumbo means. But he also had a second November to repair the ACL. Coach Stefanski said he'll be ready when he's ready. I've been playing fantasy football for long enough to realize when you have to have 2 separate surgeries on something, and when your coach says he'll be ready when he's ready, that typically isn't the biggest boat of confidence. Now, could Nick Chubb come back and look like the old Nick Chubb? Yeah. Shout out LA Knight, right? It's possible, right? I'm not saying it's an impossibility because when you have a freak athlete like Nick Chubb, anything is possible. Kevin Garnett, right? Anything is possible. But what I will tell you, that is not the most likely scenario. The most likely scenario is he's put on the IR, misses the first 4, 5, 6, 7 games of the season. Back, maybe he's himself, half himself, maybe he's not even close to him. I understand that they also have Donta Foreman and Nyheim Hines. Frankly, I think Jerome Ford is the best running back in this backfield, not named Chubb, so he is the best running back that is healthy. At running back 39, a guy that we saw finish top 16 last year in PPR, running back 25 in PPR points per game. He ranked 14th in yards created. Is Jerome Ford anywhere near the skill of Nick Chubb? No, but on a Browns team that I project to be pretty decent, ranking 23rd in carries, 22nd in rushing yards. He can also catch passes, 3.7 targets per game, 2.2 receptions per game, 18.8 receiving yards per game. Both in total touchdowns with 9, and with Kareem Hunt now gone, meaning that he's going to have even more pass-catching opportunities. Things are pointing towards Jerome Ford being a pretty safe late-round pick, which is hard to say, right? A safe late-round running back with significant upside. I think that if the reports continue to be more negative on Nick Chubb as we get closer and closer to August, late August, early September, when you're doing your fantasy football draft, then Jerome Ford's ADP is going to start to move up at not a snail's pace, at a rapid pace. I really think that Jerome Ford right now is a steal on underdog, and I think the price is going to rise, So you should start drafting them now if you're on underdog fantasy, or becomes like an 8th round pick where maybe you be as comfortable drafting him. Thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you ended up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would be fun. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen it already. I love you guys all so much. I hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you guys soon with another banger of a video. Love you guys. Have a great one. As always, good boy.